Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm proud to bring you the Pep Talk with John Carl Pepe. Greetings, John. How are you?
Excellent, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to your show.
Oh, me too. Me too. It's going to be a good one. So yeah, let's get right into it. Hercules, again, happy holidays,
You as
and
well.
hope you have a wonderful rest of the year. Folks, welcome to the Pep Talk. This is my fake talk show where we talk about things that I want to talk about, and this is always one of my favorite ones. So again. The show's been through a few phases. It started originally, it was a show with Hercules and I, basically talking about comic books, Hercules comic books focused, and then pop culture in general. And then he handed it off to me, and we were originally just an audio only podcast. Those episodes currently exist. They are archived, and we are working on a way on getting them up, hopefully on this YouTube platform, because this past year, we have been all video, and this has been fantastic. It was an experiment, I felt, that worked really well. There were some ups and downs, but overall, it was a great time. And one of the things I did want to do was carry over certain things that I had started to happen with the audio version of this show. And one of the episodes I really enjoyed was actually the last audio version of the Pep Talk a year ago, our year-end wrap up, but also an opportunity to look at some strange Batman, slightly lost but oddball media. So last year I invited Michael Dworkis and Mathew Demek, which I'll bring them on in a moment to get the formal introductions out of the way, to talk about those and just sort of our things we loved about 2024 and what we were looking forward to 2025. So we're going to do that again tonight. We are going to look at a couple comic book stories that are so, in my mind, really weird and really bizarre, and not there's a little bit of them out there, folks discussing these out there on the internet. I know Comic Tropes has done an episode on one thing we're going to be talking about, but one of the first thing we're going to touch on, though, is one of those comic stories that is very rarely talked about. So I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. I think we're going to have a lot of fun, and then time permitting, yeah, we're going to do our best of 2024 and what we're looking for, our best of 2025, what we're looking for in 2026. Unbelievable. But before we get to that, it is December, and one of the really crazy things about early December, as we record this, it is December 7th, is that a lot of our friend circle, a lot of my friend circle, as well as Mathew, uh, a string of birthdays, bang, 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 through this whole week. So one of the things I love to do is acknowledge birthdays if they are close to or around the show. So hold on to your hats. Got a lot of birthdays from a lot of our young viewers out there. So first and foremost, I do want to wish a belated but very happy birthday to my father-in-law, Jack Birdie. His birthday was December 3rd, and by all accounts, he had a wonderful time. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there, but again, as always, thank you so much, Jack. Such a wonderful father-in-law. So happy to have you in my life, and just keep doing what you're doing, because I think right now you're doing great, and we're all rooting for you. So I just want to wish him a happy birthday here on the show formally. And then we have, yes, some of our younger viewers. So we moved to December 4th. And I believe there was a viewer out in New California, formerly New Mexico, little Jackie Bristow, or sometimes known as John Christopher. So happy birthday to him. On the 5th, young viewer by the name of little David Maxwell Evgen. Happy birthday, David Maxwell. Hope it was a wonderful birthday. I know this year was also very tough on you, so rooting for you too. Then on the 6th, little Barty Capuano. He had a birthday as well, so happy belated birthday to you, Bart. Jumping back on the 5th, nope, not the 5th. Uh, Nope, moving ahead to the 7th. Do we have little Eddie the Greek Politis and little Marky Byland. So I wish you guys a very, very happy birthday. And then I also want to wish a very special early 50th birthday. He turns 50 tomorrow. Little Bobby Johannesburg Hendricks will be 50 tomorrow. So uh wonderful man and a very strong man, and really happy to know him. And 50 is a milestone, as a couple of us here know, a few of us here know. So I hope your 50 is a golden birthday, because that is gold, right? 50th anniversary is gold. But anyway, that's the birthday roundup. Sorry if I missed anybody, but happy birthday from the Pep Talk. All of us here wish you all happy birthdays. And if your birthday was not mentioned or is not around any of this time, just know we always wish you a happy birthday. All right, so now we're going to get into this. So we're going to introduce our guests. Again, they've been on the show before. As I mentioned, they were on a year ago. They did also come back for one of our Talkin Kaufman episodes when we talked about the Thank You Very Much documentary. And we're going to back now. And again, I do apologize in advance for making you guys read these comics, because boy, some of them were dogs. But first up, we have he is a writer for popbreak.com, which I once thought was a pop culture breakfast themed website, but no, it is just a pop culture website. If you need to take your everyday break, make sure it's a pop break. His name is Michael Dworkis. Michael, thank you so much for being back.
Thanks for having me, man. Always glad to be here.
Good. Dealing with the cold? Doing all right?
Dealing with the cold, getting over it, but yeah, getting through those issues were definitely something, man. And I'll have to come up with some retribution later on.
Fair enough. And then my other guest tonight, as I mentioned, he is the curator of the Blanks and Postage YouTube channel. And again, this is initially I thought this was something that was just tracking postal related maneuvers behind the scenes at the US Post Office. But no, this is actually a really cool website that does its best to capture those moments at live concerts where just everything really feels to be clicking between the audience, the band, and all the people behind the stage is doing their lights that you see from your seats and stuff like that. A phenomenal website that has gotten a lot of exposure in the last couple of years since he started it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mathew Demek back to the Pep Talk as well. How's it going, Matt?
Happy holidays, everybody. John, it's a pleasure to be back on the Pep Talk. Thanks for having me. And what better way to celebrate the holidays than to talk about vampires?
Yeah, that is a good point. I did not get to do my October episode this year, so that was part of it. I was looking for some weird Batman media. And when doing the research a year ago, when we did Batman's Mystery Club, the 1951 radio show pilot, I had read that there was they did try to do the same thing for a holiday special, but I couldn't find it. So this first story we'll talk about was itching at the back of my mind. It had been for a while, and it's something that I'll explain why it is such a fundamental part, like why it was there, right? And then it kind of led to this other thing that we're going to talk about. But yeah, this is you are right. Our December year-end wrap-up episode is talking about that time that Batman became a Dracula and a Dracula became a Batman. So we're going to get right into it, guys. So first, we start with, and I used the hardcover collection, Tales of the Batman, Gene Colan, Volume 1. This is a great series DC was doing, where it would be artist focused and sometimes writer focused, and they would just piece together all these issues And a lot of these were ones that I grew up with. So specifically, we're going to be talking about Batman issues 349, 350, Detective Comics 517, and then it wraps up in Batman 351. And that's one of the things that I also want to talk about with this. So give you just the first cover right there. All right. You can see some cool stuff going on there, man. So basically, this was a very interesting time for DC Comics and for me as a young comic reader. This is actually these issues, a few before this and definitely after this, were the Batman comics that I was picking up regularly off the spinner rack at Phillips Stationers in Montvale, New Jersey, right? And so this was a time, and it kind of started because this is like 80, 82, 83, kind of started in the like late 70s, early 80s. The Batman books started to get more serialized with subplots and very soap opera-y with some of these like supporting character subplots, which these 4 issues are heavy on. And it was really interesting as a kid to be like, oh, the story bounces around between Batman and detective and back to Batman and da, da, da. And then they would kind of throw a little bit of curveball where it's like, well, it's a couple consecutive, but that's the thing is there's a lot of stories going on here, but I really wanted to focus on this vampire or vampire story. So I'm gonna actually kick it over to Matt. And Matt, what's going on? What's this story? What's happening here?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you mentioned the soap opera aspect of it, because I was about 3 pages in before I was like, oh, this is the best episode of Dark Shadows I've ever read. And really, by the time I was at the end of all 4 issues, that was the satisfaction that I had gotten. Was, I'm a big Dark Shadows fan. I love the horror, the darkness, the campiness, and to have it married to the Batman universe with Commissioner Gordon, you talking about all the subplots. My favorite was how Alfred became the Van Helsing, and he had to save everybody. And my favorite line in all of it was when, I believe the character's name, you're talking about subplots, Jason Green asks Alfred if he's a butler, and Alfred says, I'm a gentleman's gentleman. And so the other aspect of it that I really enjoyed, it reminded me a lot of the old EC comics, Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, everybody knows, but more serialized, as you said, and of course with Batman and the Batman universe surrounding it. I loved it. I loved them all.
Mike, what were your thoughts?
I mean, it's a fun read, and I definitely dig the soap opera aspect of it, because as I'm reading, I'm thinking like, wow, this is like Adam West on paper. I mean, it has like the campiness there, but it's like the long drawn out dialogue, which, to be honest, I really dig that stuff. I really dig, the longer dialogue, let's go adventure here, quick, let's look around left, and you can imagine that dramatic tone, like very theatrical, like you're imagining, like a Hamlet or Shakespeare, like the overemphasis of certain words and phrases and how they go about trying to put this mystery together. It's an old school read, and it's one that when you really sit down and take the time to appreciate it, you can't replicate something like this.
One of the things that I thought was really neat is and again, I didn't strike me as when I was a younger reader. I was just sort of like, who's this artist that's got this really weird, like, it's not hard lines. It's not what I'm used to. It's all very flowy. And it's Gene Colan, who, cut his teeth in the early Marvel bullpen days, worked on Iron Man, Daredevil, Doctor Strange. But his big comic claim to fame was the Tomb of Dracula comic series that Marvel did in late 70s. And it had just wound up a couple years, I think, before he was lured over to DC. And, as a comic fan, especially back then, it must have been really cool to have, G. Colin, who did Dracula, now comes over and does Batman. And then to have this sort of vampire story at play was keyed right into his sensibilities. However, I found, as far as with the art, a real struggle between letting Gene do Gene's thing, but with the inkers kind of trying to rein it in to a more kid-friendly style, right? And yet you have, I think Alfredo Alcala does the first chapter, and then the back three are by Tony DeZuniga. And Tony DeZuniga has also a very unique, strange style. So as a kid reading this, it was a little weird for even then for my sensibilities, and it really does stand out now. There's that one cover, which I find very interesting, because there's definitely points where like Tony and Alfredo definitely let Gene Colan be Gene Colan. But there's this one cover for Detective 517, and it's Gene Colan, but he's inked by Frank Giacoia. And even like you could see that's a more like DC house style in that one, with yet still kind of looking like Gene Colan's art. And I'm surprised they didn't go for something like that. Because again, as a young kid reading this, you get, the story basically starts off with Batman isn't even in Gotham. He's in Hollywood, and he's off doing something different. And then you Dick Grayson, who, it again, as an adult hit me. This kid's been like a freshman, sophomore in college for 12 years by this point in like real time, and,
John, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the beginning. And, because we celebrate pop culture on the Pep Talk, now let's get specific here. 1982, these issues came out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know exactly when in 1982? Because not only is Batman in Hollywood, but he's in a seedy motel. Now, this was around the time that John Belushi died in Hollywood, and Hollywood was getting this, nasty reputation for, this seedy dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that Batman would be found there in the shadows.
In the shadows.
Right?
It's a very, very good point. And this probably, because I think this was probably late 82. So Belushi definitely would have been dead by that point. And I think that's the thing, because you have Jerry Conway and Paul Levitz writing this story. And Jerry Conway is he later on went on to write a whole bunch of Law and Order spinoff stuff. So he definitely is a guy that does a lot of rip from the headlines kind of stuff. And there were definitely things in here that I felt were like, so it's like, as a kid, right? You come across this subplot where Commissioner Gordon is fired from being a police officer because the mayor has this new rule: you can't be in there for more than 20 years. And you first see Gordon; he's got like a full beard, he's freaking out, but then he mentions Chief O'Hara, and you're like, oh wait, is this is still like the show, and so there's, like you said, Mike, there's like a lot of that sort of like over dramatic prose, and yet you'd never see this in a Batman TV show, right? And so as this sort of plays out, the first issue, Batman's not even in Gotham, he's in Hollywood. That story continues in the next issue of Detective Comics. But this story continues in the next issue of Batman. And so it's sort of like, there is that story in between that we don't see because Gene didn't do the art on that story. And so first you see Batman, he's in Hollywood. In the second chapter, he's coming back. And they did this really cool thing that I love, was seeing how the bat plane goes into the barn and then goes down into the cave. Like, I always loved that kind of stuff when you got to see that, how the things operate and how things work. but Dick Grayson is in love with this older student, and boy, she turns out to be much older because we find out she's now again. What'd you think? What'd you guys think of the safeness of this story? Because we find out that this woman Dala is actually a as this one priest who has been studying and following this lore. Apparently vampires themselves don't exist. They use this sort of vampiri, which this priest says that I named them this. And the idea that they really, because of the comics code, that they had to play this safe. So kind of what'd you think about that? Because still, as a young kid, there's some very scary imagery in here.
I didn't think they played it safe at all. I thought they blamed it on an African tribe, right? It became a voodoo curse. Like that's what. Now I don't know what the original Dracula origin story is, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't trace back to Africa.
Yeah, it's weird. You're right, because that's something I didn't want to talk about, because they sort of merge vampirism with traditional voodoo zombies, right?
Right.
These days we now know of zombies as like chemically or space dust induced, right? But back originally zombies were done through a voodoo curse. And that's sort of what they do here. And yeah, it's basically so Dala and her brother Dubois, who now calls himself the monk for reasons. Actually, I kind of know the reason. I'll get to that in a second. Turns out they were plantation owners in Louisiana near New Orleans, who, once the Civil War ended, didn't acknowledge the Emancipation Proclamation. And this guy, I love the part where they're like, this guy would whip anybody, whether it was his slaves or it was like a stranger on the street. And so that was a very interesting thing. And yeah, so as far as like Dracula, the book version is concerned, they really don't delve into it. It was really Francis Ford Coppola that kind of gave us that sort of bit of backstory, I guess, which has now been expanded on in a couple movies, some good, some not. But I still felt, though, like the idea that you couldn't say vampire, that you had to say you created vampiri, like that's a code thing. At first, when Robin gets bit and you don't actually see it, I was like, oh, they can't show it. But then it was more a dramatic reveal at the end of that first issue that Robin got bit. And that's something that's really funny because, this does something with the Batman and Robin characters that has also been done many, many times over the years, of the Batman and Robin kind of not agreeing and butting heads and over a woman. What'd you think of that aspect, Mike, as far as like this sort of weird tension between Bruce and Dick, as far as, and how that sort of has been used later on? I'm thinking like Batman and Robin, right? That's the whole thrust of that movie, besides just making toys. But
right. Right. Well, it seems like they used it as an opportunity because, Dick would not really question, Bruce's motives. He would kind of follow along. I mean, look, there were the occasional thought bubble like, oh, I would have done this differently. Oh, I don't agree. But it was never something spoken out loud, because maybe also for the time it was written, it's like, oh, he's the ward of Bruce Wayne. He shouldn't contradict him. But using the vampiri, using that as their MacGuffin element, like, oh, well, now we have a reason to make him openly question, to openly, confront him. And yeah, you mentioned at one point they were fighting over a woman. I mean, listen, it was every teenage boy's dream to fight over an older woman with with somebody else. I mean, come on, it was something that, for the larger part of comics, they didn't really push that envelope, and this gave him the conduit to do that. It was also good to see Dick Grayson. Okay, he's not a kid now. He's actually arguing. He's standing up for himself. He's being the aggressor. That wasn't seen very often back then. We've seen it, in the 90s or definitely into the early thousands. We've seen him more obviously into his evolution as Nightwing. But as Robin, as the young kid still in training, never saw that.
Mm-hmm. No, what's kind of interesting too is how largely ignored this story is. Not just because it's just a few years before the Crisis on Infinite Earth reboot, and as far as, yes, continuity, unless you're Grant Morrison, no, this doesn't fit in any sort of continuity. But one of the things that I find interesting about this is that this story is a direct homage to a very early Detective Comics story within the first year of Batman, so pre-Robin. It's a very classic cover where Batman is looming over this castle, and then you got the guy in like the red monk outfit, like, on a horse carriage with the woman, and it's very famous. Neil Adams emulated that later on in the 60s. Talk about Dark Shadow vibes. That cover is all Dark Shadow vibes. But that was a two-part story in 1939, 1940, where Batman meets this girl Dala, follows her back to Transylvania. His fiance Julie Madison comes along. There's this mad monk who it turns out is a vampire, and it sort of plays out very bare bones and very basic. But it does. It goes all in. Vampires turn into werewolves. I think, like I said, I think they do say they go to Transylvania, and pre-Robin, right? So, and then since this story, since 1982, 1983, there have been a lot of Batman vampire stories. There was the Batman Dracula comic books, which were part of the Elseworlds thing, where Batman is a vampire throughout. There have been some cartoon episodes of Batman Brave and the Bold that riff on what if Batman was a vampire. There was even the JLA animated Gods and Monsters, that alternate world where it wasn't Bruce Wayne. I think it was like Kirk Langstrom, who instead of becoming Man-Bat became a vampire Batman, a Dracula Batman, right? So I find it very interesting that this story that sits sort of right there in that weird period is largely ignored. And I think a big part of why it's ignored is a couple reasons, because you definitely have Batman with that struggle of fighting vampirism, which happens like that for him, right? And all of this happens in like one night, in like one day, which is kind of crazy. But he struggles with the vampirism, and he actually vampire kills some thug on the street, right?
But it's interesting because he makes a conscious decision to go after someone who, in his eyes, society wouldn't really miss them, and they're already corrupted, and they already smell of evil, while he like criticizes Robin when Robin, thirsts after Vicky Vale. He says, you would have turned her into one of us, and she's pure. And so he did make that conscious decision of who to go after, while also indicating that Robin was a little bit further along in the vampire process and was really kind of losing control of his bloodlust, and was really just about the blood, and he wasn't really, kind of focused on who he was turning into a vampire.
Yeah, that scene with Vicky was very, very, very bizarre. And then Vicky's like little subplot is really interesting too, because she had been out of the comics for a while. They brought her back. She thinks she's figured out that Batman is Bruce Wayne. Alfred goes and hires the human target Christopher Chance to impersonate Bruce Wayne, and then all this stuff kind of happens around this vampire story. But yet, except for that moment when Dick tries to Dracula Vicky Vale, none of the supporting characters really kind of touch. Like Christopher Chance is there disguised as Bruce Wayne when the priest shows up, right, to talk to Alfred about the vampire. But and he's like, well, I got to see what's going on with this Bruce Wayne guy. This is really strange. And then it's like, you know, and I'm sure it continued later in these other stories, but it's just so funny. It was like this juggling these subplots that you wanted to string through, having this one storyline, which should really be, I'm sorry, a monumental marquee storyline, right? And then, you know, not having those subplots kind of interject too much into the main story, which again keeps this sort of these events in a bit of a bubble that I guess it is easy to forget about. And Matt, as far as killing that guy, he goes one better. He knows who this thug is. He calls him by name. He's like, haven't I warned you? This is for the last time. And then he just Dracula's this guy. He's like, I hope I haven't conscribed you to a darker hell than mine. And I think
he's kind of being sarcastic about that.
I guess.
You know, he's kind of like, hey, buddy, enjoy the rest of your life as a vampire. Sorry.
Or again, like you made that point, like was Batman, did Batman turn him into another vampire, or did he just kill the guy?
That's kind of left hanging.
It is very much. I mean, again, maybe in the next issue, because that's my biggest problem is how abrupt this thing ends. You'd think this fight between Batman and the Monk would be so much more epic than like a couple 3 pages with a punch, and then Batman punches out Dala, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, serum time. Here we go, guys.
Right. Honestly, the priest seems to be more of the hero than anything else.
Oh yeah. Irish Loomis. Right, very much doing like a little bit of a Donald Pleasance role in this one. Yeah, I was so let down, I guess, by that brief ending. And we don't even see in this issue Dick Grayson getting cured.
No, you don't see it at all. And that was the thing. Like as I'm reading it, you know, it always, you know, flipped in the book. It flipped to the next issue of Detective Comics with Solomon Grundy, and I stopped. Like, did I miss something? Did I skip a page? It was that abrupt because the preacher says, okay, I'm going to, you know, here comes your cure. You're right. Doesn't show Robin at all. We assume that he injects Batman. Doesn't even show the injection itself. And all of a sudden, the final panels with Deadshot ripping up photos. So what happened? Where's the epilogue? Where's the story? It's just like, hey, I'm going to inject you. Fade to black.
And that, you know, I didn't have time to go and look to see what the next issue would have been after this, but it wasn't a Gene Colan issue, and that's why it's not in the book. It might be in the Don Newton book that I have, but I really think it's like a panel one, like, oh man, I'm glad that's over. Thanks for saving me, Batman. No problem, Dick. Don't be a jerk about ladies again. And it's also interesting because Gene took a nice break from the book, because that next issue with Detective with Solomon Grundy, it's like 523, so that's like almost half a year later, you know. But yeah, so just so bizarre. And again, I one of the weird things about this story for me as a kid was I had gotten 1, 2, and 3 like as they came out, and for some reason missed that 4th chapter. So like I picked up a wholly different issue of Batman a couple months later, and I was like, I guess he got better. And that's like sort of the weird thing about choosing to tell serialized stories at a time when a lot of kids were still just, you know, not I was surprised that they were really trying to tell stories to hook older readers, you know, issue after issue, month after month. And yet kind of the way they did, like, well, kids like vampires, let's give them this, you know. But again, man, some of those pages though are beautiful, but man, they are intense. Like again, Gene Colan, man, just Dala and the Mad Monk just bursting through the door there. The weird room they have with the people upside down with their necks slit and stuff. Like,
yeah, the upside down crosses.
Yeah. But you know, again, as weird as it is and as abrupt as that ending is, really fun, really neat period of comics, especially for Batman. Again, the interconnected storyline between Batman and Detective, something that would become just the standard not that long after, so again, I really enjoyed revisiting this because it's something. It's like every 20 years I think I have to revisit this story. Michael, any final thoughts on Batman versus the Vampiri?
I mean, like you guys said, it's a really good story. It's underrated. It's not a story that's typically highlighted. Although, much later, you were referencing, the Elseworlds story, Red Rain, where vampires actually do come to Gotham. They do talk about Dracula. Batman gets turned partially into a vampire just to, face off and defeat Dracula. But then in the second, it's a trilogy, and then the second story, which was titled Bloodstorm, that's when Batman actually fully becomes a vampire thanks to the Joker. He ends up losing his humanity, which I actually thought it could have been, there elements from this story could have been used for Bloodstorm, because now Batman's infected. He's having this battle, which we saw in these issues here between Batman and Detective Comics. He's fighting, from losing his humanity. He realizes what's happening to him, which is pretty much one of the essence of the story of Bloodstorm.
It's interesting because Doug Moench was also a Batman writer at that time who started writing Batman again in the 90s, and I definitely got a sense from that Batman Dracula Red Rain and the Bloodstorm, like that whole vampire trilogy he did with Kelly Jones, that was Doug Moench basically being like, yeah, I pitched a much better story than Jerry and Paul did. This is what I would have done had I had that. Great observation. Matt, any final thoughts on Batman versus the Vampiri?
Well, again, the whole soap opera nature of it, and including the entire Batman universe with the rich cast of characters. Commissioner Gordon, Barbara Gordon made an appearance. Chief O'Hara got name dropped. You had the whole storyline with Rupert Thorne. I would have loved to see Rupert Thorne as a vampire, right? Now, that was the one thing that I felt like they held back, because regardless of all these different storylines, the vampire aspect of it was really limited to Batman and Robin. And it would have been great if it was like a little bit more like COVID, where like everybody was getting it. And, Barbara Gordon's a vampire now, and Commissioner Gordon's a vampire now. And we still knew that Alfred would save the day. But, if we would have had half of Gotham City, with thirsting for blood, it could have, just taken the story to the next level. But I loved it for what it was, and I enjoyed reading it. And, it was no Dracula, the superhero.
Yep. So yeah, no, great story. As weird as the whole history of the Vampiri was, and I guess the big moral of the lesson on this is don't stick your hand in any wicker baskets that might have vampiric snakes in them, I guess. But yeah, so Matt brought up what we're going to talk about next. And okay, so I think it's sure, it's arguable, it's debatable that Batman is the best, if not one of the best superheroes in all forms of media. You know who isn't any sort of a good superhero, especially in this comic media? It's Dracula. So yeah, I actually tracked these down. We actually had these at the shop. So this is Dracula from Dell Comics. Now, Dell Comics was once a very popular comic company. They did a lot of licensed things, a lot of comic adaptations of TV shows and things like that. And this is so they also decided to branch out into the monster superhero game. And I thought this was an anomaly, but there was a surprise in the third comic that we'll talk about, that there was a little bit more going on. So in 1962, Dell Comics releases a comic adaptation of the Bela Lugosi Dracula movie, the Todd Browning Bela Lugosi famous film. And 4 years later, So that's considered Dracula #1 by Dell Comics. 4 years later, in 1966, they come out with Dracula, and it says here on the side, collector's issue, the origin of the new Dracula, the secret of Dracula's strange superpowers. And one of the things I like about this copy, because it is a little beat up, but one of the things I love is if you can see right above Dracula's head, there's a little date stamp. May 31st, 1966. And Hercules, our esteemed producer, May 31st happens to be his birthday. So I thought that was a really neat little coincidence. So yeah, so clearly you can see what's going on here. You got this guy, right? Little doctor guy with the vial. There's the Dracula's castle, just like it is behind me. There's fire. Then there's this guy in this costume. So yeah. So this story is basically clearly capitalizing on the big Batmania of 1966. And Dell Comics is deciding, the Batman's really popular on TV. What's the closest we can come? Hey, let's take Dracula and make him a superhero. However, there's a twist. Because it's not the Dracula. It's not the Dracula from the book and the movies. It's an ancestor of Dracula's who's never actually named. But later goes around calling himself Alucard, right? Alucard, which again, if you know the Universal Monster stuff, son of Dracula, was Count Alucard is Dracula backwards. They always make a point to explain the U stands for Ulysses, which I think is really funny. I feel there was a very missed opportunities considering he is a doctor. He's a scientist. He could have just called himself Dr. Acula, but that's for something else, right? So he is trying to clear his family's name by coming up with a cure for, I think, Alzheimer's, right? For memory loss, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by using a serum derived from bats. And then upon one of my favorite bits, upon completing this serum, feeling that it's a success and it's ready to be tested on anybody, he enjoys a refreshing glass of mineral water. And because
why? You know why? Because he has to let us all know, because he has no friends.
He does have no friend. That is also a very thing. He points out he has to toast his victory on his own because he has no friends. He has this poor guy's got nothing, just these bats that he just sets them free at the end of the experiment. Anyway, but yeah, one of the bats knocks over the serum into his glass of mineral water. And so again, not having friends to see this, he drinks the water and then all of a sudden can change into a bat. Those are his powers, right? That's it. He can change into a bat. So he decides that he wants to do good because the villains are fantastic. Very 1966 Batman. He comes across the evil Boris Evil, right? And kind of gets kidnapped by him. There's like a whole thing, man. But he eventually decides to build a costume and be a superhero and leave Transylvania because his castle burned down and no one wanted to bother to put it out because of the blight of the Dracula curse. And so this causes him to leave. And then of course the other great thing I love is you have this like this training montage of him just working out for like 2 or 3 pages.
He's getting buff.
And then, and what's interesting about the publication history of this, so they did issue 2, and then there was an issue 3, and then there was an issue 4. However, there was no issue 5. And in 1972 to 1973, issues 6, 7, and 8 were reprints of 2. And this is actually the reprint. This is actually 7, and this is actually 8, right? So what they did was and it's so funny that in DC on the bottom, that small publishing information. It says reprinted by popular demand. Really? Really, Dell Comics? There was that much. 6 years later, there was that much of a demand for you to reprint these. Not
What did
buying
Dell
that.
Comics do in the 6 years between printings?
Yeah, I mean, obviously nothing with this Dracula stuff. That's a very good question that I didn't really research. Nothing with this. Again, I don't know why there was no issue 5, why they just went ahead with 6. And my sense is this little monsterverse that they tried to do kind of fell apart on them. Because the thing that blew my mind the most is in the third story. So yeah, he goes to America. He stops some weather dirigibles. He gets a sidekick, a girl sidekick named Fleeta, short for Fleeter Mouse. He gets a secret cave, his bat cave, right? But one of the things is that there's so in the third adventure, they mentioned that there's a Frankenstein's monster who's the protector of the city. He's like their Superman. And so Dracula would have been their Batman. But what's hilarious is, and why he's the worst superhero, because he has 2 very successful adventures. I'll give him that. And then because there's a Frankenstein monster who's sort of like the protector of the city that he's moved to, he goes, well, I can't just fight crime. This Frankenstein's doing it. I'm going to be a supernatural detective and I'm going to debunk ghosts and goblins. Again, bringing us full circle back to Batman's Mystery Club. Because this is what this guy wants to do. So Matt, first of all, what did you think about the concept of a shared universe when they got to that Frankenstein protecting the city part?
Well, it only makes sense that they were probably building up to a super team, right? I don't know if you remember early 80s, 1980, 1981, there was a cartoon series on CBS, very short-lived, called Drac Pack.
Yep.
Where there were like these teenage, Dracula, teenage Frankenstein, teenage Wolfman, and then they got together and they fought crimes
and had a band.
Maybe they had a rock band, right? And so I felt like this was a natural progression where they were trying to integrate other heroes to create a Justice League of horror, which would have been cool, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think today would be great. I kind of like would love somebody to take this concept and the Frankenstein, because I got to track down these Frankenstein comics and see what's going on there. But I really would love to see some, because one of the things that I did like I said, is like, the villains all have such cartoony names. Dr. Maltomps, Hobgoblin, was it Hobart Goblin, right? And all these really wacky names. Then there's an evil Pied Piper who's just the evil Piper, who tries to steal the town's kids or whatever. But it kind of cracks me up that's sort of what they were trying to go for. And I love that that Dracula, I don't call him Batman, Dracula just can't decide what kind of a hero he wants to be. That's the comic I want to read. I want to see and I really want it to be a little more self-aware than this is. I would literally love to see a redo of this, set it in the mid 60s, where you do have this descendant of Dracula trying to put together his trying to clear his family's name, tries to do that, and is literally inspired by the fact that there's a Batman TV show. And he's like, I should do that. That's the kind of thing I really want to see. And then I kind of want to lead into just his ineptness and his indecision of what kind of hero he wants to be. That to me was the funniest part. And I'm like, so it was every 2 issues, was he going to reinvent himself? Well, I've solved all the ghost stuff. Let's become an archaeologist superhero now. Mike, what did you think of this? And again, guys, I'm sorry for putting you through this, although I did kind of enjoy these.
I mean, you know what? It was funny. It was campy, and I mean, you know, the artwork I think lends itself to the campiness. The wide eyes. You had like the jagged fingers of like the villains and characters. I mean, the whole premise of that it's Dracula, but not Dracula. But he yet, you know, think about this: a serum that was designed for brain, for brain disorders ended up turning him into a bat. Could you imagine if that got mass produced? Talk about a story that could, you first were thinking in the Batman universe, okay, half of Gotham turned into vampires. Imagine this: half people turned into bats because they had Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
not only is he this really bad superhero, he's a terrible
He's a
scientist.
terrible scientist. I mean, and it seemed like throughout the story, it's like okay, these dastardly villains. I mean, the one of the villains you first mentioned, he's got the rockets. He's going to set them off, and he's got this crazy plan that once they reach space, the satellites will think that everybody shot the nukes off. I mean. I mean I don't know if that's just creative brilliance or that's the most far-fetched thing you can think of, and yet it was up to the bats to resolve that. Which, to their credit, they did bring in the bats' ability for their internal sonar, their radar to help them see things. So that was kind of clever. But I mean, look, this is typical, old campy style with people running into each other, and I mean, you have to love it.
You make a very good point that yeah, as much as it's like a campy superhero thing, this is a lot of, and it is emulating that style of like DC Comics in the Silver Age, like the Flash facts, right? And
Mhm.
they would a lot of them weren't real science facts, but some of them were actual real science facts that they tried to use. They were fulfilling an edutainment requirement, and I think that this
Mhm.
book really strives to fulfill an edutainment requirement. And and one of the things that really struck me was the second adventure. Dracula comes to America. The plot behind the death-dealing weather ships, floods, hurricanes, blizzards, torrential rains. Can Dracula stop them? This is about cloud seeding. This is about manipulating weather,
Mhm.
which is a thing that is done to help crops along, but has now become a whole nother thing under the conspiracy theorists that think that they're using this cloud seeding to cause actual natural disasters. So this comic is like decades ahead of its time as far as Dr. Maltom's plan that that fake Batman Dracula has to stop, which I found pretty amazing. That kind of shocked me. I was like, wow, this is kind of a really neat thing. And again, yeah, third issue, Dracula's Secret Cave, the origin of Fleta. And again, Dracula finds his specialty. That's the story where he decides he wants to be a ghost hunter. So yeah, we have you want to credit where credit is due. We have writer we have writer Don Siegel and artists Tony Tallarico and Bill Fraccio to thanks for this. And one of the
John,
other
can I make a
oh,
quick point to that?
please do.
We have the advantage of looking at characters like Superman, Spider-Man, Batman over the entire evolution of their character through different writers and artists and different perspectives. But, this is a character that lasted 3 issues. It never got its chance to have Jack Kirby right, or create its his artwork, and he never got a chance to have Frank Miller do his stories. And perhaps over his evolution, had he survived, he might have had an in-depth storyline like Tony Stark's alcoholism, or the issue with Green Arrow with the heroin addicts, and he never got his chance to mature as a character.
That is true, and never got a chance to get a better costume either. There definitely would have been a costume redesign along the way. But yeah, it's a good point. Like like in the world of Watchmen, superhero comics don't exist because superheroes actually existed. So it was all pirate comics. So, yeah, Frank Miller wrote a pirate comic in the world of Watchmen. Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see if this really took off and people responded to this, and that we would have gotten to see some of these guys take on their revisionist takes on this revisionist take. Yeah, the only other time I think they've ever tried to do Dracula as superhero in recent memory is that Dracula Unbound movie where he's like using bats to make giant fists and things like that to fight off the enemies. But yeah, Dracula as a superhero, one of my favorite things also, and I'm sure you guys if, can recite this by heart, so I would like you to do it with me, is Dracula's Oath. He actually has a very snappy, it's no Green Lantern oath, but if you guys are ready, you recite along. I pledge by the strange powers which have become mine to fight against the injustice, corruption, evil, and greed which fills this earth, in the hopes that somehow my example will be an example to all men. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, guys?
Wow.
So yeah, look at that, guys. We did it. We talked about that time that Batman became a Dracula and a Dracula became a Batman. And boy, did I have a lot of fun reading this, and I had a lot of fun talking with you guys about it. Really quick, in the couple minutes that we do have left, because I think we only have about 4 minutes left. Mike, give me one favorite thing you had for 2025.
Oh, my favorite thing for 2025, it's got to be Energon Universe, man.
Nice. What are you looking forward to 2026? Don't say Energon Universe.
Oh, I can't say Energon Universe. Well, I am. Well, here's the thing related to the Energon Universe, in production, the cartoon series based from the Energon Universe of the Transformers and G.I. Joe. So bringing that to animated form, I got to stick with my guns on that one.
Very good. I'll allow it. Matt, what was one of your favorite things of 2025?
Favorite thing about 2025 was being on the Pep Talk at the end of the year. And next year, 2026, looking forward to The Mandalorian and Grogu. Also looking forward to seeing Fish at the Sphere.
Nice.
Did you get it booked?
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. I too am looking forward to Mandalorian versus Groglet. It looks like a very expensive episode of the TV show, so I hope it does well. Matt, thank you. That's awesome. I know you raved about one particular movie this year. So I just do appreciate you giving the shout out to the Pep Talk. But really quick, 10 seconds. What was that movie again?
One Battle After Another. And that was actually what I was going to say was the highlight of 2025 for me was seeing a film that I know I'll watch for the rest of my life. Don't want to spoil anything about it for anyone. Make up your own mind, but it's a great film worth seeing once or twice at least.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up for the Pep Talk, not only for this episode, but for the year. And yeah, I think my favorite thing, like Matt, was being on the Pep Talk by putting together the show every month. I know we skipped a couple months, but it is something that I do at times agonize over. What am I going to do? How can I book? How do we schedule? What's going on? But I always have a really good time doing it. I really enjoy it. I very rarely go back and rewatch it, but I actually have done a little bit more of that for this year because of being on YouTube. Makes it a little easier for me to kind of see what the whole big picture looks like. Based on our material tonight, I went without the studio backdrop because I wanted to have my nice little scenic view of Castle Dracula in full effect for this evening. And but yeah, this show has been so much fun. all the years now. We're going, I think, into 5th year of me doing any sort of podcasting, starting with the old show with Hercules. So again, Hercules, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really love doing this. I love doing the other podcasts that we get to do when we get to do that with Paul. I do have another podcast if you want to check out the Indie Creator Comics YouTube channel, where we review independent comic number ones every week, almost every week. And then we also interview indie comic creators. But yeah, I am thankful for the show. It's been the highlight of this year, and this is a bit of a rough year for me as well too. I will not lie. I am also thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for my family. I am thankful for the people that I get to see every day at my wonderful job at the Joker's Child in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And I'm just thankful to be here. Folks, it is December 7th. We've got less than a month to go. I hope, again, like I say every year, my wish that they'll be singing and dancing in Israel next year. And as always, less than a month left. I'm going to make it through this year if it kills me. Have a wonderful rest of your 2025 and have a glorious and prosperous 2026. We'll see you on the other side of the calendar with a whole great lineup of shows for next year. Thank you for watching.
And thank you very much, John, and thank you, John's guests, for today. This was an excellent and awesome show. Thank you for remembering my birthday, and I want you to know that you're appreciated in turn, and we're very grateful that you're part of this adventure, and we look forward to many more adventures to come. Good night, everybody. Happy holidays, joyous journeys, and amazing adventures. Until next time, this is Hercules Invictus signing out. Good night.